You think Adam Pearce is just another corporate suit making safe decisions to protect WWE's golden boy? You think firing Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker was just about maintaining order and protecting Roman Reigns? Well, you're about to discover that what happened behind the scenes is so much more explosive, so much more calculated, and so much more devastating to WWE's long-term plans that it's going to change everything you thought you knew about how this company really operates. This isn't just about two rising stars getting fired for attacking the tribal chief, this is about a systematic power play that's been months in the making, involving backstage politics that reach the highest levels of WWE management, creative decisions that could destroy the careers of multiple superstars, and a corporate strategy so ruthless that it's making veteran wrestlers question whether they can trust anyone in WWE's leadership structure ever again. And if you think this story ends with just two firings, you're dead wrong. What Adam Pearce did to Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker is just the beginning of a corporate purge that's going to reshape WWE's entire roster, eliminate wrestlers who don't fit their narrow vision of what a WWE superstar should be, and send a message so terrifying that it's already causing panic throughout the entire locker room. Hashtag the attack that changed everything. Why this wasn't just another beatdown. Let's start with the brutal truth that WWE's corporate spin machine doesn't want you to understand. The attack on Roman Reigns by Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker wasn't some random act of rebellion or unscripted violence. This was the culmination of months of frustration, systematic mistreatment, and creative neglect that pushed two of WWE's most promising talents to the breaking point. Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker didn't wake up one morning and decide to destroy their WWE careers by attacking the company's most protected superstar. They were driven to this desperate action by a creative system that had systematically wasted their potential, buried their momentum, and treated them as expendable assets in Roman Reigns' never-ending storyline dominance. For months, both Reed and Breakker had been expressing concerns backstage about their creative direction and lack of meaningful storylines. According to multiple sources within WWE's creative team, both wrestlers had requested meetings with management to discuss their frustrations and propose alternative directions for their characters. Those requests were either ignored completely or dismissed with vague promises about future opportunities that never materialized. Meanwhile, they watched as less talented performers received pushes and storylines simply because they fit WWE's narrow template of what a main event star should look like. Bronson Reed, despite his incredible athleticism and unique combination of size and agility, was consistently portrayed as just another monster heel without any character depth or meaningful feuds. His natural charisma and surprising technical ability were ignored in favor of booking him as a generic big man who existed primarily to make other wrestlers look good. Bron Breakker's situation was even more frustrating because he had all the tools that WWE typically values: legitimate athletic background, impressive physique, family wrestling connections, and natural intensity. But instead of building him as a future main event star, WWE's creative team seemed determined to keep him in developmental purgatory, bringing him up to the main roster only to waste his potential with meaningless feuds and inconsistent character direction. The attack on Roman Reigns was their way of forcing WWE's hand, of creating a situation where they couldn't be ignored or dismissed any longer. They knew the risks, they understood the potential consequences, but they also knew that continuing to accept their current treatment would mean slow career death through creative neglect. But here's what makes this situation so much more complex and controversial. According to backstage sources, the attack wasn't entirely unplanned or unauthorized. There were discussions within WWE's creative team about ways to create new challengers for Roman Reigns, and both Reed and Breakker had been mentioned as potential options for future storylines. The problem was that these discussions never translated into actual creative commitment or concrete plans. WWE's creative team was talking about using Reed and Breakker as threats to Roman, but they weren't willing to invest in building them up properly or giving them the character development necessary to be credible main event challengers. So Reed and Breakker took matters into their own hands, creating the exact type of dramatic moment that WWE's creative team had been discussing but was too cautious or indecisive to actually execute. Their attack on Roman was essentially them doing WWE's creative work for them, forcing the company to treat them as legitimate threats whether they wanted to or not. Hashtag Adam Pearce's power play. The corporate response that revealed everything. Adam Pearce's decision to fire Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker immediately after their attack on Roman Reigns wasn't just a disciplinary action, it was a calculated power move designed to send a message to every wrestler on the roster about the consequences of challenging WWE's established hierarchy and creative authority. But to understand why Pearce's response was so significant and controversial, you need to understand his position within WWE's power structure and how his role as general manager on television reflects his actual influence behind the scenes. Adam Pearce isn't just playing an authority figure on WWE programming, he's actually one of the most influential decision-makers in WWE's day-to-day operations. His background as a respected independent wrestler and his years of experience in WWE's developmental system have given him credibility with both performers and management that most corporate executives lack. When Pearce makes decisions about wrestler discipline or creative direction, he's not just following orders from higher UPS, he's exercising real authority based on his understanding of both the business and creative sides of WWE's operations. This makes his decision to fire Reed and Breaker particularly significant because it represents his personal judgment about how to handle challenges to WWE's creative authority. According to sources within WWE's management structure, Pearce's decision to immediately fire both wrestlers was controversial even among WWE's executive team. Some believe that the attack, while unauthorized, had created exactly the type of dramatic storyline content that WWE needed to reinvigorate Roman Reigns' character and create new main event challengers. Others argued that allowing wrestlers to force creative changes through unauthorized actions would set a dangerous precedent that could lead to chaos and undermine WWE's ability to control their own programming and storylines. Pearce's decision to side with the disciplinary approach over the creative opportunity reveals something important about his priorities and his vision for how WWE should operate. He chose to prioritize maintaining corporate authority and creative control over capitalizing on the dramatic storyline potential that Reed and Breaker's actions had created. But the decision also reveals Pearce's understanding of WWE's long-term business strategy and his belief that protecting Roman Reigns' position is more important than developing new stars or taking creative risks. By firing the wrestlers who attacked Roman, Pearce was essentially declaring that Roman's status is untouchable and that challenges to his position will be met with the harshest possible consequences. This sends a clear message to every other wrestler on the roster: WWE's creative hierarchy is not negotiable, and attempts to force changes through dramatic actions will result in career destruction rather than opportunity advancement. But Pearce's decision also creates long-term problems for WWE's creative development and talent pipeline. By eliminating two promising young wrestlers for the crime of creating dramatic storyline content, WWE has demonstrated that they value control and predictability over creativity and risk-taking. #the backstage politics that nobody wants to discuss. The firing of Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker has exposed a level of backstage politics and power dynamics within WWE that the company desperately wants to keep hidden from public view. This isn't just about two wrestlers getting disciplined, it's about a systematic approach to talent management that prioritizes loyalty and compliance over creativity and performance. According to multiple sources within WWE's creative and talent relations departments, the Reed and Breakker situation was part of a broader pattern of WWE's management becoming increasingly intolerant of wrestler input or creative suggestions that challenge their established storylines and character directions. This represents a significant shift from earlier periods in WWE's history when performers had more input into their characters and storylines. The current management structure has centralized creative control to such a degree that wrestlers who express dissatisfaction with their booking or request changes to their characters are viewed as problem employees rather than creative collaborators. The backstage reaction to Reed and Breakker's firing has been more intense and widespread than WWE's management anticipated. According to sources within the wrestlers' locker room, many performers are interpreting the firings as a warning about what happens to wrestlers who don't accept whatever creative direction they're given, regardless of how it affects their careers or character development. This has created an atmosphere of fear and resentment that is affecting morale throughout the roster. Wrestlers who had been considering requesting changes to their characters or storylines are now afraid to speak up, worried that they could be labeled as difficult or insubordinate. But the political implications go beyond just wrestler management relations. The firing decision has also created tensions within WWE's creative team, with some writers and producers believing that Reed and Breakker's actions had created exactly the type of storyline opportunities that WWE's programming desperately needed. These creative personnel are frustrated that potential storylines involving Reed and Breakker as main event challengers were eliminated for political reasons rather than creative considerations. They argue that WWE's obsession with control and predictability is preventing them from developing the kind of compelling content that audiences want to see. The political fallout has also affected relationships between different departments within WWE's corporate structure. Talent relations personnel who had been working to address Reed and Breakker's concerns feel that their efforts were undermined by the abrupt firing decision, while creative personnel feel that their potential storylines were sacrificed for corporate politics. More significantly, the firings have created concerns among WWE's business development and international expansion teams who worry that the company's increasingly rigid approach to talent management could limit their ability to develop stars who can appeal to diverse global audiences. The Roman Reigns Protection Protocol. How one man's status controls everything. The most controversial aspect of the Reed and Breakker firing situation is how it reveals the extent to which WWE's entire creative and business strategy revolves around protecting Roman Reigns' status, often at the expense of developing other talent or creating compelling storyline content. Roman Reigns' position within WWE isn't just about his individual success or popularity, he represents the company's entire approach to creating and marketing main event stars. WWE has invested so heavily in Roman's character and storylines that any threat to his position is treated as a threat to their fundamental business model. This Roman Reigns protection protocol affects every aspect of WWE's creative decision-making, from which wrestlers get pushed to main event status to how storylines are developed and resolved. The protocol essentially states that nothing can be allowed to genuinely threaten Roman's position or undermine his character's credibility. The attack by Reed and Breakker represented exactly the type of threat that the protection protocol is designed to eliminate. Even though the attack could have been used to create compelling storylines and new main event challengers, it was treated as an unacceptable challenge to Roman's status that required immediate and harsh response. According to sources within WWE's creative team, discussions about how to handle the Reed and Breakker situation were dominated by concerns about protecting Roman rather than evaluating the creative opportunities or considering the careers of the wrestlers involved. This approach has created a creative environment where storylines are evaluated primarily based on how they affect Roman's character rather than their overall entertainment value or their potential to develop other talent. Writers and producers report that storyline ideas are routinely rejected if they could potentially make Roman look weak or vulnerable, even temporarily. The protection protocol also affects how other wrestlers are developed and positioned within WWE's roster hierarchy. Performers who show potential to challenge Roman's position are often held back or redirected to avoid creating situations where they might overshadow him or generate audience reactions that could undermine his status. This systematic approach to protecting one wrestler's position has created what some backstage personnel describe as a creative bottleneck, where the entire roster's development is constrained by the need to maintain Roman's dominance. The international implications of the protection protocol are particularly problematic because different global markets have different preferences and cultural expectations for wrestling entertainment. The rigid focus on protecting Roman's character limits WWE's ability to adapt their programming for different international audiences. But perhaps most significantly, the protection protocol has created a situation where WWE's long-term creative sustainability is dependent on one performer's continued success and availability. If anything were to affect Roman's ability to perform or his audience appeal, WWE's entire creative strategy would need to be restructured. ## the talent development crisis, how firings destroy WWE's future. The decision to fire Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker represents more than just disciplinary action against two specific wrestlers. It's a symptom of a broader talent development crisis within WWE that threatens the company's long-term ability to create new stars and maintain audience interest. WWE's current approach to talent development has become so risk-averse and control-focused that it's systematically eliminating the type of creative risk-taking and character development that historically created the company's biggest stars. The Reed and Breakker firing is just the most visible example of how this approach is destroying promising careers. Both Reed and Breakker possessed exactly the combination of athletic ability, character potential, and audience connection that WWE claims to be seeking in their talent development programs. Reed's unique combination of size and athleticism made him a standout performer who could have been developed into a legitimate main event threat. Breakker's legitimate athletic background and natural intensity gave him the credibility and presence that WWE typically values in their top stars. But instead of investing in their development and giving them the creative support necessary to reach their potential, WWE treated them as expendable assets who could be discarded the moment they became inconvenient or challenging to manage. This approach to talent management is creating a cascade of problems throughout WWE's developmental system. Young wrestlers in NXT and other developmental programs are watching what happened to Reed and Breakker and learning that creative ambition and character advocacy can be career-ending rather than career-advancing. The message being sent to developmental talent is clear: success in WWE requires complete compliance and acceptance of whatever creative direction you're given, regardless of how it affects your character development or career trajectory. Innovation, creativity, and personal advocacy are not just discouraged, they're dangerous. This is creating a generation of WWE performers who are technically proficient but creatively passive, afraid to take the kind of character risks or storytelling chances that created WWE's most memorable and successful superstars. The talent development crisis is also affecting WWE's ability to attract and retain high-quality performers from other promotions and independent wrestling. Word spreads quickly through the wrestling community about how WWE treats its talent, and the Reed and Breakker situation has become a cautionary tale that is affecting WWE's recruitment efforts. Wrestlers who might previously have been interested in WWE opportunities are now more hesitant because they've seen how quickly promising careers can be destroyed for political reasons rather than performance issues. The international implications are particularly significant because WWE's global expansion depends on their ability to develop stars who can connect with diverse international audiences. The rigid, control-focused approach that led to the Reed and Breakker firings limits WWE's ability to develop culturally versatile performers who can succeed in different global markets. ## the creative stagnation problem, why WWE can't create new stars. The firing of Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker is a perfect example of why WWE has struggled to create new main event stars despite having access to incredibly talented performers. The problem isn't lack of talent, it's a creative system that punishes exactly the type of ambition and character development that creates breakthrough performers. WWE's creative process has become so centralized and risk-averse that it systematically eliminates the organic character development and storyline evolution that historically created the company's biggest stars. The emphasis on control and predictability has created an environment where genuine star-making moments are prevented rather than encouraged. Reed and Breaker's attack on Roman Reigns represented exactly the type of organic, dramatic storyline development that could have created new main event players and revitalized WWE's creative content. Instead of capitalizing on this opportunity, WWE chose to eliminate it entirely to maintain their existing creative hierarchy. This pattern of eliminating creative opportunities rather than developing them has become standard practice within WWE's creative operations. According to sources within the writing team, storyline ideas that could potentially create new stars or shift existing power structures are routinely rejected in favor of maintaining established hierarchies and predictable outcomes. The creative stagnation problem is compounded by WWE's increasing reliance on part-time performers and established stars from previous eras rather than investing in developing current roster members.